Hi, everyone. Welcome to SoDA Series Live. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Kristen Bell from the Strategic Development Team, and this is Tom Beck. Hey, Tom, Executive
Hey,
Director of SoDA. How are you?
It's good to see you. We were down and out for the count, all of us sick last month, so it's really good that we're on the mend and get to be together today.
Yeah, we're happy to be back. So apologies for those regulars for last month's cancellation, but we're super excited to be back with you again, and excited for today's discussion. So for those new to SoDA Series Live, welcome. SoDA Series Live is a collaboration between Adobe and SoDA, the Society of Digital Agencies, who Tom will tell you a little bit more about in a minute. Our purpose for these discussions is really just to share some of the things that are top of mind for these incredibly inspiring creative leaders and design leaders from all around the world. They'll share a little bit about their professional journeys and kind of what's inspiring them today. So we hope that you're able to take away a few little nuggets to help you in your own careers and creative endeavors in life. So thank you so much for being here. Tom, for those new to SoDA, do you want to just tell them a little bit about your organization?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you all for joining and welcome again. I'm Tom Beck, Executive Director at SoDA. And SoDA is a member-based organization for founders and leadership teams at digital design and creative studios. We were founded in 2007, and we have 95 member companies that span 20 countries. And the work within SoDA is focused on peer knowledge exchange, collaboration, learning, and we spend our time helping one another get smarter about running the businesses that we run and creating kind of world-class creative companies. And so we're proud to partner with Adobe on this, and Adobe has been one of the actually founding partners of the organization. They've been with us for this whole journey, and we're appreciative of their support for SoDA and the creative community at large.
No, it's our pleasure, Tom. We're always incredibly inspired and educated by the work that your member agencies do. So love supporting you guys. So thank you for the partnership over the years. So should we get started?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. So to start things off, I'd love to bring Talon Wadsworth on, principal designer here at Adobe. Hey, Talon.
Hey, Tom. Hey, Kristen.
Talon's just a really great partner with us and incredible at leading conversations with creatives and designers and design leaders. So we're super happy to have your partnership and love seeing your passion through these conversations. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, I'm excited to be back after last month. And it's like my best part of my job is being able to talk design with designers.
We love it.
So
we love it.
I'm excited to be here.
So Tom, would you like to introduce our guests today?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really happy to introduce Todd Purgason. Todd is, hey, Todd.
Hey,
Todd is Executive Creative Director at Metajive, based in Encinitas, California. And Metajive is a digital design and creative company that does work for really cool brands like Lyft and Nike and School of Rock and Surf Ranch and many others. And Todd has been in the industry for a long time. He was actually the co-founder of Juxt in the late 90s. And Juxt went on to become one of the founding members of the SoDA organization itself. So you're not going to find a more experienced designer, especially in the digital space. And I was joking with Todd beforehand that, I always love that adage for people who've been in an industry for a really long time and accumulated such knowledge that, someone like Todd has forgotten more about design than most of us even know. And so we're thrilled to have you on today, Todd, and really appreciate you carving out the time to join us.
Happy to be here. Thanks, Tom.
Yeah. Thank you.
And just a few quick logistics for the audience. Kristen and I are going to drop off camera, and we'll be interacting within the LinkedIn comments thread. So if you have questions or comments, please post those there, and we'll respond to them, or we'll pose the questions to Talon and Todd throughout the conversation. Also, just say hi and introduce yourself and let us know where you're from.
Yeah.
We're looking forward to a great conversation today, and we'll look forward to seeing you guys on the other side.
Great. Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Kristen. Todd, it's such a pleasure to be with you today. How's everything How's everything going on the West Coast there this morning?
Oh, it's good. It's good. We had a bit of summer come back yesterday, so it was
Nice.
pretty warm. That was kind of a nice touch. I'm a swimmer, so it's great to jump in the pool when it feels like summer. So,
Yeah, indeed.
yeah.
It's getting a little chilly up here in the Bay already in the morning, so it's nice to see that. I got my sweater on, so I'm ready for fall already, even though it's not quite. It's still California, so
Yeah.
I wouldn't call it like real fall.
Exactly.
But no, it's great to be with you today. Super excited to talk some shop with you. Let's just like start out here and get a little background. You know, you've been doing this design thing, for a while now, and founding, agencies and running them. Give us a little just a little taste of your journey so far and kind of how you got to be here.
Yeah,
throughout
I
your career.
like to say in design terms, I'm not old, I'm distressed. So, I've been around. I've learned a lot. I think the most amazing thing is the amazing people I've been able to work with. I've been blessed and clients that I've been able to work with. Yeah, I started my career pretty humbly as an architect, and it was an interesting time in the early to mid 90s because computers were kicking in. I was doing a lot of 3D modeling and things, and the internet was a new thing, but it was so geeky. It was just, I think back and I just kind of question why, like how can I engage in these database searches and things? But it was that connectivity, connecting to people around the world. It's hard for people in today's world to relate to how just that dynamic of having a conversation real time with somebody in Japan, which was so inaccessible before. So, I downloaded the first web browser the first week it came out and started using the web. Shortly after that, I was making really simple and nasty looking HTML pages, which, for me it was good timing because I was learning to be a graphic designer. I know Adobe owns Photoshop and Illustrator, but I downloaded an illicit copy of Photoshop and Illustrator in the early days. And
I think many of us got our start that way.
yeah, and I just started playing around with design and learning, and the web kind of gave me a time to kind of learn at a pace and learn something new. Things were pretty simple back then. I remember Razorfish was 3 guys in an apartment. It was just a different era. And as things kind of progressed, for me, I've always been a passionate creative, dive in, do, make. When I was younger, I had more energy, so I would lock myself in a studio and come out with some crazy piece of furniture that looked really cool, but people would not want to risk their life by engaging with it. And so the digital medium gave me an ability to kind of play and evolve with it and see where it went. And I started Juxt with Steve Wages, who's like also a big SoDA member. I think it was 98, if I remember. Mm-hmm. Things were really new. Flash was pretty new. I started with Future Splash and it became Flash. And my whole life changed when I got the opportunity to do a website for a past friend and professor or a business owner and boss to do an architecture site. And I just kind of dove in. It was one of those passion projects, as creatives, you're like, okay, I'm going to push myself and see how far I can take this. I've read a lot, I've explored a lot, I did the site. I'm showing off some of my own buildings and projects, so it's very personal. But when it launched, a week later, and at this time, all the designers were on an email thread, and there was like maybe less than 200. It's just such a small community. And when it launched, the next week, I got a newspaper clipping from Tokyo, like of our website. I couldn't read it, but it was like, I was like, holy crud. And that day the phone rang and it was Macromedia. And they're like, how did you do this? And so that kind of engaged me into this, talking with them and, working with the software developers, getting involved with the design community as it kind of began to scale and kind of, we all work to kind of pursue our passions and invent, interactive in the web space. Mm-hmm. And so Juxt kind of played, we were just really ambitious creatively. We weren't the best in the world, but we tried to make our work the best that we can do. It's like, we used to say, it's like you go into Jux and every day is climbing Mount Everest in shorts and flip-flops. We're just under resourced, but we would just get together and make it happen. And through that, you learn a lot. Over the last 20 plus years, one of the things I've learned a lot is how to be a better leader, how to be a better communicator. I was kind of known as a hard ass. And, that I got good work, and I still have really great relationships with people that kind of were proven under fire, but I'm proud that now I don't have to be such a DICK when I engage with people. But through that journey, I learned a lot, sold Juxt, helped, mentor people at other agencies, learned there. Even though I'm distressed, I'm still learning. I still have, every opportunity, every project, every client. It's an opportunity to kind of see the world from a different perspective and do different things and to grow. And so that's kind of why the topic today, anyway.
I love that. There's a couple of things in there that I just want to sort of circle back on. One is that, I think I started myself. I started out just like you, and I think a lot of other designers, as architects. So I'm always sort of like fascinated by like how like architects are like, this is not. I'm not gonna go, sit there in the back of the back of the shop, like doing all this architecture work forever. I'm gonna go like design like exciting new things, and so I always love that connection. A lot of my mentors, a lot of the people I've kind of came up with, like, everyone sort of like was dabbling in architecture before they got into design. So I love that. The second thing I love that you talked about, which I think even going from those early HTML days, then into the more like pushing the web beyond its sort of capabilities, into a more interactive space, is, I see a lot of designers, some of the best designers, really challenging themselves and pushing themselves into these new mediums or into these new territories and communicating in these new ways. And I mean, talk a little bit about Flash and what Flash really enabled you to do that you were so excited by. Because I loved Flash as well for a lot of similar reasons. Like it really pushed the web forward, in terms of like what could happen there, albeit what could this medium be used for, and designers were at the forefront of that, of pushing the web technologies forward. So maybe just touch a little bit. I'd love to hear about how you used Flash, what was exciting about Flash for you at the time, and how you ended up sort of getting more into that interactive space.
But I think in the early days, everything was very simple. Back then. Today things are very complex. And so, I like to think of it as, when settlers came to America, there was a lot of adversity, but there was a lot of simplicity too. And if an immigrant comes today and winds up in New York City, it's a challenge to get your bearing and kind of figure things out. So at the time, I remember when I first started working with that, got to the point where I was just able to wrap text around an image in HTML. That's how limited it was, right?
Yeah.
And Flash gave you the ability to kind of design things and have them render how you wanted them to be, as long as they were vector-based, and it was a good format for the web. But as it progressed, the community progressed and the tool progressed, and it became a lot more than just kind of a way to lay out a page that doesn't get screwed up by HTML. And it was empowered with code and all these different things. So for me, the one thing that really, really helped was you were designing and building.
Yeah.
Right? Today, we tend to have these really disparate silos of the UX people, the UI people, the dev people, and even in the dev, front end, back end.
Yeah. And
you still get work and come with a really strong collaborative team. But in general, you can't, a UI designer is not an expert in front end development. And so it's like you make decisions and you're designing for comps and not for experience.
Yeah.
So Flash gave you this great ability to kind of test as you built, design, build, and to create, and you taught lessons. And it was the Wild West. Like every day somebody was coming up with something that you would just swear out loud when you saw, because it was so new and so unexpected. And I remember I had a really good friend who passed away about a decade ago, Hillman Curtis. I remember Yugo, who is this amazing Japanese interactive designer, did this piece of work. He sends me an email, because we used email. There was nothing else back then. And all it said was game over with the link. And it was just, and it wasn't like we were threatened. It was just this excitement and this thrill. And then working with the folks at Macromedia at the time, they were just delighted. They would create a tool and they had no idea where it would go. And so there was a lot of exploration. There was, like, hey, let's create a loader for the site that's 4 megabytes. There was a lot of kind of silliness, but I appreciate the curiosity and the creativity. And I can still see its footprint on, the mobile experience and a lot of the apps that we experience. We've learned the lessons through R&D in that space and a lot of kind of creative expression to get to things that are more meaningful. Mm-hmm. So, and just to finish off on that, like my last job, I was able to be much more hands-on on purpose. And so I've been watching Webflow for a few years and I picked it up. It's a learning curve, but there was such a joy in being able to craft and build in the same way, where you're not fixing your designs in a theoretical comp. They're more of a visual sketch, and then you go into development and you kind of flesh it out, and it teaches you new lessons and you evolve. And in the end, there's just such a delight to create that way. So
100%. That's really the foundation of, I think, we had those arguments over the past, decade or more, designers learning to code, right? And sort of the drive towards that, because there really is not really a substitute for being able to, put your hands, on the tool that's sort of founded, in the technology itself, and be able to sort of work within the limitations, but then understand how you can then push those or change those or break those in ways to, once you have a foundational understanding of it, to create something interesting or exciting to you. There's something that really, that experience is so integral, to design, whether it's, even print, like come back, from some of my, sort of foundational sort of moments in design, really understanding the technology of print and how that made me a better designer, So I even think in many ways, like, designers putting their hands on it directly, learning those lessons, working within those limitations can lead to really great results.
Yeah. It's the joy of creativity is exploring a lot of things and seeing how they come together, being surprised and seeing what you can do.
Yeah. Well, as we've gotten into this, like we kind of touched on a little bit with that UX UI, this is kind of a little bit of a sort of side topic here, but I was kind of like, as we've gotten into a realm of more patternized, more codified sort of, sort of design systems and the things like that, like, what role does design have to play in a world where, again, a lot of these things are just really about efficiencies, gaining efficiencies when it comes to processes, or, trying to shorten that gap in translation between the design comp and the front end sort of, engineer? Like, what is the role of design now as we've gotten into more of these automated sort of workflows? Like, where are we at with that? What are your thoughts there?
I think that, with the web, there's a high degree of functionality. And as things have kind of evolved, like having worked on a few design system projects, you can see the business value, right? Because it allows you to deploy things quickly. And it's a challenge to get devs lined up to build things. And if you can kind of do it efficiently, it makes sense. I think there's a lot of creativity in thinking through, like, how to structure those things. I've seen it done right. I've seen it done wrong. I've seen people go in and start designing the atoms or the tokens by default first. Yeah. And then eventually, months later, they start designing pages. And to me, that's a bit ludicrous, right? Yeah. It's like you need to design the ecology before you design the cells, right? And so it's kind of exploring and getting to the right place. And in the functional world, I love the humbling nature of user testing, right? Having been that run with your instincts creative director back in the day when there was no data and it was just, your ideas, your passion, your experience that lead design. Today, you can kind of go, well, for this functional experience, this is what these people really want, and it works for them. And So I buy into that, but I also buy into the side that brands need to be ownable. They need to express themselves in a way that differentiates so people kind of recognize. And sometimes you have to make a decision. Yeah, the users said they preferred this, right? It didn't mean that they hate this. This is better for us as a business to set us apart, to kind of be who we actually are. You know, working with Google a bit, they call it being googly, right? And so you need, as brands, we still need to find ways to kind of show up in that. And then there's a yin and a yang. You know, we go through times where it's very functionally based and very austere and simple, and then there's this kind of rebirth of interactivity and motion on the web, and microsites and things that were deemed foolishness not too long ago, right? So I just see that, you know, the audience kind of, as it gets more digital, will desire more digital experiences where creativity will show up beyond those systems. And in those, for some brands in those experiences, like, hey, let's break all the rules on purpose, because that's a statement in and of itself, right? I mean, Snapchat kind of did this. It kind of came in with a UI that only kids understood. So when parents jumped in, they couldn't figure it out. So it kind of became a barrier, right? It was that inside handshake. And so there's times and places for creativity, and then there's times and places for the creativity to be very structured and focused, in my opinion. So.
Yeah, it seems to be like a if you sort of zoom out and see those larger trends, those times when, you know, like there are no patterns, there is no roadmap to how you're going to go and execute on this, or what a web page even means, you know, like even those early days of Flash. And then, you know, once, you know, everyone sort of got out there and explored and tried new things and saw what worked and what didn't, like eventually there is going to be a codifying, you know, of the best practices, of the right patterns, of the systems, right? And then there's going to be a time when efficiency is sort of, you know, the name of the game. But once everyone's sort of been fit into that same mold, you know, the dribblization, you know, of the web, you know, you get those designers who again are looking for ways to stretch or to challenge the establishment, you know, or to break into new mediums and communicate in new ways. And you ideally get this kind of explosion. And I've been sort of obsessed with like, well, you know, of course, I love being here. Like, how do we make tools to be able to sort of, you know, to enable designers to go out there and do that, you know? And I think that's a big challenge that I love sort of digging into.
Yeah.
How have you seen the role of the designer like evolve? And have you thought a little bit about how it might change, you know, in this moment and where it's going?
Yeah, I mean, there's different types of designers, obviously, and I think that, you know, I remember in early days, people struggling with this argument: am I an artist or am I a tool? Right?
Yeah.
And to me, it's both, right? And so, and when you get hired by a business to help them meet an objective, right, you need to be able to solve problems, right? Think through design thinking, and I don't mean in terms of workshops. I mean in terms of executing and solving problems and being strategic and, you know, doing the things that we know how to do to kind of engage, right? But then people love creative things because it inspires them as a human being, right? You know, it's for example, working with some pretty buttoned up businesses, sometimes when I'm asking them to kind of all of a sudden put on this, I'm a super elevated creative thinker and I'm going to make creative judgments on creative's work, you know, that's a stretch, right? Especially to shift gears from, you spent 3 meetings looking at Excel spreadsheets or Google Sheets, right? Now it's, you know, pick the right idea. So just walking in with like a music video or something that's just highly creative to reset their brain and remind them the power of creative thinking, the power of letting yourself out of a box, right? And to me, the designer is solve the problem, but find the right moments in which that creativity can shine. You know, doing things like, I want to change the labels in the navigation. It's like, yeah, you're an idiot, right? It's like, nobody wants that, right? It's like when you hover over the label or click on the label, maybe there's a moment for creativity. But if you try to trick and fool people, you know, most people aren't going to appreciate that. Yeah. So, and you know, and then if you really love that dynamic, because today there are people that love being product designers, which is, you know, nudging pixels, I just want to hone it. I want to love it. I want to create this experience that people love, and just the small minutia details, right? Which is fantastic. On the other side, you have people that love designing posters where it's just pure creative, right? And so it's knowing what you're working on and who you're working for and how it kind of combines. And this, like, one of the reasons I kind of picked the topic we were going to talk about today is just kind of I'm super curious. I have been for 20 years waiting for this new era to show up, to see how both of those worlds come together in a different space. Right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there is that kind of understated element of design, which, again, I think it's one of the hardest things to teach, to mentor, younger designers to do, which is really about strategic communication or strategic storytelling. That you as the designer have the skills and the power to tell a great story, to sell people on an idea, to get them out of, we got to change the CTA to a slightly bluer shade of blue, that rather than being driven by, the business objectives purely, that we can take all of our facility and kind of package it together into something that's compelling, that speaks to both the user ideally, but also the client, and the client, what their objectives are. And they really rely on us to do that. And I think it is one of the more understated parts, especially now. I see a lot of, a lot of internal design teams have been built up, and their skills really are those of the Lego brick, sort of combiner, production sort of, person, the person sort of, pushing those pixels, There's kind of this question here that I think relates to a lot of this, which I think is getting at kind of like that next phase, which is Vansh Batnagar in the chat. Can you talk about? He's asking if you talk about a little bit about, well, how do you think the design role should evolve? Like, what do you think that next step is? And maybe we can touch a little bit on the technologies that I know that that you're interested in, and things that are going to be impacting the work that we do. How do you see the role of the designer evolving from here?
Yeah, I kind of see that as like asking, like, how should coffee evolve, right? The reality there is there are so many different types of problems to solve, and there's so many different types of designers. I think that I think in general, I would say, stay curious, always. Stay teachable, always. Stay inspired, always. I've been humbled when, we did a lot of work for Coca-Cola at Juxt. They basically forced us, we were doing a lot of work, but they forced us kind of into taking over all their digital media. And like, I was like kicking and screaming, no way am I doing this, right? And we got into it. And I remember with one of my designers just doing this really horrible brief. I was so pessimistic and so just, I look back and I wish there was like a bigger me behind me that just would have knocked me on top of my head. So, but Dave Smith, one of my designers in Canada, and George Fino, they went off. They said, forget what Todd said, and they created, back then it was, I'll just say, a campaign, and I looked at it and it just blew me away, and it ended up winning a People's Choice Award in the Webbies, right? Off of me being a diva about, but they did that by staying passionate, and they were basically, how can we do the best banner we've ever created, right? How can we do that? So how should it evolve? Should stay on that same track of these tenets, these values, and what does that mean for me in my pursuit in the business and my clients that I'm pursuing? Because if your values are that I want to help my clients succeed, then it's like, I'm going to have to maybe adopt and learn new things that aren't necessarily my strong suit, right? Or something that's new, so that I can help them succeed. If my values are, I just want that awe-inspired creative that when people look at it, they just go, damn, right? Then they're not going to be system designers. They're not going to go into the product. That's not the right space for them. Yeah. So I would say one general trend that is in digital is, letting users help guide, doing validation work, testing, but also as you grow as a creative leader, understanding when you need to kind of go a different direction. Like I'm working on a project right now, and a big philosophy we have to carry through is they have to become more approachable, right? Online. They do stuff in the real world regularly, but they're mistrusted. The whole industry is mistrusted. And so a lot of our design decisions are, okay, is this making it more approachable? There's just a lot of tactics you carry out. And even if a user test says, I like this one better, it's just like, that's not approachable or ownable enough for us. And so, it's a mixed bag. I know that probably didn't really answer the question. It's stay curious and stay passionate. That's what it all boils down to.
Well, I think there's something in there, because I think those two terms, I think always, again, they get, I think we kind of employ them as we're talking about this. And I think as you're speaking, I was sort of in my head, sort of formulating almost like, well, how does interest or curiosity and passion sort of play out, like on a project? And it's like, well, say like connecting directly with the user. Like if you're interested and curious, about what the users are doing or what they're trying to do, you're going to find that empathy, and you're going to be digging for that deeper meaning, like, okay, this is not just about the color of the button or the width of the stroke or the typeface or whatever, that there's something, that they're fundamentally not being able to do, or the thing that they're actually finding more success doing. And so that curiosity, that passion, and really drives that interest and that engagement with the problem, and I think that that's been one of the things I've always found is like when I'm more engaged with the project, the better it goes, when I'm more interested, right, the better it goes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And the same thing with technologies as well, just being interested in those as well and being curious. What are the things that are getting you excited right now? What are those technologies that you've been, sort of eyeing and maybe exploring and dabbling in, or things that you're ready to do whole projects in? What are some of those technologies that you've been thinking about?
Yeah. I mean, one really quick I mentioned before was, Webflow. I picked it up a couple years ago, taught myself, went through the learning curve. Their teaching materials are outstanding, like unbelievably outstanding. And I appreciate their creativity they bring to that. But it's not so much like, oh, we need a new tool. It's the empowerment for the designers and businesses to be able to kind of craft and deploy as fluidly with a tool like that. And you as a designer, if you're working in this space, to get an understanding of how, because we can say, hey, designers should code, but that's a pretty big hurdle for a lot of people, right? And so, and it's hard to maintain a relevant level of ability, right? So, but if you can get a tool where you can craft and build at the same time, and it teaches you great lessons, it empowers the decisions, it gets you to think bigger and bolder. So that to me is really, I think, a compelling thing. If it were an easier learning curve, I'd tell all my designers, you don't have a choice, you're learning this. But it's a pretty big curve. Yeah. The other thing that I find is like the immersive technology. The whole, I hate to use the term metaverse because it's just a tough term, right? Yeah. There's a lot, as designers, we're gifted at being cynical. And so there's a lot to be cynical, in that video that Zuckerberg put out, if anybody here was on that, I apologize, but it was just so horribly done. Just so horribly done. Not the execution level, but the storytelling and things. It was so condescending. And
well, it seems really driven more by business objectives, right, than like actual user objectives, right? That's what I felt sort of seeing it.
Exactly. And for me, when I started in the web in the late 90s, they were talking about, we had these movies like Lawnmower Man and
Johnny Mnemonic.
Yeah. And it was like, there's going to be this virtual world someday, right? And so there was this coding language very early called VRML, which, having been an architect, I was like, okay, you're idiots. Nobody's going to want to walk around streets of data looking for stuff. It just, people get lost walking through a mall, right? So that doesn't add up. But the idea of being able to create free from physics, free from gravity, free from time and space, right? In a world that there's just creative opportunity abounds. Like, it's easy if you get overly creative for people to get lost. So I've been very curious and waiting to see how this would play out. Hollywood's kind of done a fair job of painting pictures to wrap our head around things, right? But for me, I'm most excited about the creative opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
I used to play a lot of video games, not because I was a big gamer, but because I loved to go into worlds and see other people's creativity played out. You know, I did love particularly Gears of War.
Yeah.
After a tough client meeting, to go chainsaw some aliens in half was very therapeutic.
It was great.
Yeah.
We need more Gears of War. Yeah. Bring it back.
Yeah. So this new world of creating these spaces to explore, designers being able to sell their work as NFTs, a lot of it is carpetbagging BS, but I have some friends that are, you know, that have been empowered and be able to change their career track because they do really artful stuff and people appreciate and buy it. So I see this as a new renaissance, like playing out, like similar to Flash. It's not as accessible,
Yeah.
you know, because you have to, like, working in Unity and 3D is it's a bigger commitment,
Yeah.
right? But ultimately, when the tools get better, like my last agency during the pandemic, you know, I was, you know, everybody got the Rift when it first came out. You know, they walked the plank and they did the painting tool, and it was like the cool thing. But it left everybody with this, you know, after the novelty's done, it was like, yeah, you know, it was like, yeah, it wasn't super impactful in my life and my experience. It was a fun novelty. The technology wasn't quite there. When the Oculus 2 came out, like during the pandemic, one of our guys, Steve McGinnis, his family's in New York. Over Thanksgiving, he and his family got together in VR and they played games, they watched movies, and he came back and he was like, man, after 10, 15 minutes, you totally forgot that you weren't just sitting together and doing stuff. And we had been talking about how do we connect better as a team in this new environment. We had people that were really struggling with mental health issues and things because, you know, they're locked in a single studio working in their closet. Like, so we tested it out and we tried VR. We found this great platform called Immersed, and it just blew us away. And not just because it was like, ooh, we're working in VR, but it was the fact that, like, here, screen sharing, I struggle with. I got to keep looking up at that camera because the eye contact thing, screen sharing is like inhuman because people are like, as they're
we've got these mediators.
Over half of communication is nonverbal and it doesn't come through. When you get into the VR space, the eye contact, the 3D sound, even just having floating hands and heads, it tricks your brain enough to go, I'm talking to my friend. Even Jake, who I did this a lot with, you know, he turned himself into Freddie Mercury, but I didn't see Freddie Mercury. I saw Jake because of his voice, right, in the space. And we found that we can go in and we can work, and you know, you can create screens the size of IMAX screens to work on and present on. The presentations were completely fluid, no latency. So you can look at video. You know, we have these great tools now that have evolved, like Sketch or Figma, where you can go in and just hit the headphones and have a conversation really fluid. And that accessibility and that ease of use is great. You know, putting on a headset, dialing in, getting all that stuff takes some effort. But what we found was it helped a human problem, right? Like literally, we kind of did a test and we experimented and we played with it before we got everybody headsets and we started using it. And we got to this point where Jake and I were working on basically on the essence of the Starship Enterprise, with space and light that really affects you from an architect standpoint. Most people don't understand the effect of lighting in space. So when you work in your closet, you think it's convenient. And I say, you're killing yourself psychologically by doing that. Find a better space to work. Go into VR and you have this lightness, you have this experience. And he's working next to me, I'm working, we're listening to Spotify on his computer together. And we've been kind of locked away for months. And I literally started tearing up. Like, I wasn't thinking about it. It was just like, I didn't realize how starved I was for this kind of connection. Right. So now we've progressed. We're not locked in our rooms, but we're working hybrid. And so today I play mini golf with some of my guys when we do one-on-ones, just to kind of, you know, guys here, we walk to the coffee shop and the guy's remote. It's like, hey, you know, it's screen sharing, looking at your face and you having to look at my grizzly face all the time. It's not super fun. So let's try something different. But mostly I found that to solve a human problem at work. And that's what will make it work. As the technology gets better and the experiences get better, you know, the commercials, and I have good friends that are working on those exact commercials. So I'm not putting them down in any way. It's hard to do it in a way where people aren't cynical, because it just feels wrong
Yeah.
to the human experience. But when you get in there and you feel human and you feel that experience, you realize, oh, I need to be more curious and open-minded about this.
Yeah.
Just like, the older generation, when the web came around, it was like just a fad, or rap music, just a fad. It's like we need to kind of explore where it could go.
Yeah. There's something in, I think, what you're saying where, a technology, like VR, being in these virtual worlds, when you are now in absence of all the things that make connection meaningful in the real world, it's an opportunity to examine, to sort of turn the lens and really examine, okay, well, what is it about our natural environment that allows us to have these types of interactions, right? And you can even sort of apply that also to game worlds, right? To these virtual worlds that have been there, whether, Gears of War, World of Warcraft, today with Fortnite, that there's something in what you're saying that resonated with me in terms of like we need a shared perspective or a shared experience, so naturally we come into the physical world, and we're getting all these benefits and all this sort of ambient sort of benefit. Like, we're all here together in a room, and we kind of implicitly understand the purpose of that room in some way, right? There's these signifiers, these things that we almost don't even notice, right? And that allows us to facilitate these types of interactions that we have, one-on-one in person. But in the virtual space where you have nothing of that, you have none of that, you have to build all of that, right? Like manually, piece by piece. Mm-hmm. That's a lot to take on, right? And I think you're saying something like, if you can create a shared experience. I remember having these really formative memories of going into World of Warcraft for the first time, because like they had done the work to think through this world that wasn't our world, right? It's this other world, so we're sort of put into a new place already, but we're having this shared experience of walking around these huge environments as these these different sort of avatars. But they allowed us to have a shared experience, which makes those interactions meaningful in a way. Yeah. So like they hang with you, right? Yeah, it's really interesting.
Exactly. Yeah.
We got a couple of questions here rolling into the chat here. I just wanted to cover before we wrap up. I mean, we just could have got on these threads, and now I'm like, oh wow, it's almost over. So a couple here. One from Deverick Jones. Again, we're gonna be kind of jumping back a little bit. But Deverick wanted to know, what's the best format or problem-solving technique on solving creative issues with a brand new team? You've created new teams from scratch. You've sold your agencies. You've gone in and done it again. Like, what are some of those things that you've done to help bring that team together to solving these design problems?
Yeah, I think it's a process of first connecting as people, learning to kind of gain trust. As a creative leader, I view my job is to inspire people to do better and to grow more, right? And so in a group environment, group setting, it means doing workshops and things together that are celebrations of creativity and fun and things like. I'm not saying here at Metajive we've done a ton of these things, but we just started doing them on a monthly basis. Last Friday we did what I call Fail Fridays, where we get together, you spend 15 minutes coming up with a concept and idea and executing, knowing you're going to fail, and then sharing with the group in a minute. And love it. And you get surprised by the strongest designers kind of sometimes do the weakest work, and the perceived kind of weaker, younger players just blow you away, right? And then you're also surprised by like how much can get done in 15 minutes, which makes you kind of change the way you think. And that, it's fun, you laugh, you don't take it too seriously, but things like that kind of engage the group together. But then individually, it's who are you, where are you on your journey, how can I help you grow, and for everybody it's different, right? And it's just like, and my job is, hey, if I don't take the hard lessons I learned by doing everything wrong so many times and translate it into, this is a kind of, here's a few steps for you to step up, like on a pathway that's a lot more, less painful than the pathway that I took sometimes, right? It's a blessing for you because you grow in your career and your journey. But for me, it's a bigger blessing because I hit a point as a creative director where I transitioned from, I cared passionately about the projects. I cared passionately and blindly about the project success. So the people I work with were mere tools to deliver on that. And it was just poor humanity on my part. But I transitioned to it at a certain point to where the people were the projects.
Yeah.
I love creating things, but to watch them create something that I never would have thought of, but, just steered them a little bit, not taking any credit, but steered them a little bit. That's the joy. So working with teams is, being able to kind of inspire that curiosity, that creativity, that personal growth. There's also, it's a difficult time. I have a lot of my ex-Chucks guys are now elevated and they're leaders. My nickname was the Dream Hammer. Like they created a poster and everything. And there's really good and really bad in that. And so they'll hit me up a few times a year. I hear this from one of them. It's like, I sure wish I could Dream Hammer right now. Because this new generation, being able to challenge people is much harder. Yeah. And what happened in that past era, the challenge lit a fire that purified and created pure gold. I mean, that's these guys that I work with, that I'm humbled by their ability to create today. Like, I just lit the fire underneath them, and it was through really intense expectations and challenge. And so with some of the guys today, I asked them, like, do you want that kind of honesty? I won't be a jerk about it, but you want that kind of honesty? Because most people don't want it. Most people just want you to say, good job. I wonder if this should be blue, right? As opposed to, like, seriously, like, you're capable of so much more. You're so under delivering for yourself right now. Yeah. Like that just caused growth. And so, like, moving forward, how do you inspire? I would say part of it is finding a way to infuse that challenge in a positive way in today's culture, so that people can experience that kind of rapid growth, so that when their career is matured, they're like, holy smokes, I owe so much to that guy and that experience because I grew so much. Yeah. Not that you want to take credit for it, but just so you can help.
You're sort of just like giving them the pieces, right? And then it's up to them to pick it up. But I think investing in that like, process or structure or environment to create that trust, to build that trust, but also then to sort of lay the gauntlet down and say, okay, well, this is how we're all going to hold each other accountable, But you need that foundation of trust, I think, to then be able to layer those things on top of it, right? And I've definitely found that myself in the work that I've done over the years, and just getting excited about designing that process, right, with people, and really focusing on the growth of that. So I think that's really insightful. Well, just right before we wrap up here, I always love to ask people, what's keeping you inspired right now? What's that thing that is keeping you excited? And that could be design, that could be books, that could be photography, whatever it is. What's that thing that's keeping those creative juices charged for you right now?
Yeah, I mean, to me, coming out of the pandemic, and I don't want to paint it as like the super bleak experience for me. I had it pretty good, but it made me appreciate, the human connection, human interaction. Right. And I literally, part of why I switched jobs was I wanted to be with people more. And I drive a 45-minute commute to be in an office with people. Right. And so I get inspired by that, by humanity, by the connection, working together, solving together. Like, pitches suck, but also, I have so many great memories of walking to the liquor shop at 3 a.m. with the guys laughing our butts off as we're kind of taking a break from working hard to deliver the next morning, and we don't tend to work as hard as that anymore. But so that inspires me. I like to I'm in this dangerous space over 50. When you get to 50, your brain starts to hard code. And so it's literally true. And so I have to just keep trying new things, new tools, being open to new ideas, staying curious. So I love nature. I think oxygen, getting out in the wilderness, stepping outside. I'm a swimmer. I love the ocean. I love water. And so those things, it's not necessarily I'm looking at it and getting this epiphany. Oh my gosh, look at the waves. I can do this thing. It really is, it's corny for non-surfers, but when you've surfed, there's a zen to sitting and waiting for a set. You're in the lineup. People aren't talking. It's not about going out there. It's about harnessing nature and kind of your ability for this very short-lived rush of experience. But it's also about just sitting there in nature, like with fish. So I'm inspired by nature. I'm inspired by architecture. I used to be an architect. Just being curious. Like, like I said, video games. It don't limit it. It's just, looking at things. I will say that in our world, one last thought here is it's hard for people to just turn on the creative juices. They think, oh, I can sit down on my computer now and I can shift from this meeting and that meeting, and all of a sudden I'm Mr. Creative Problem Solver, right? You have to find what are the things that trigger your creativity, right? I've learned that people have it differently. I used to go to a bookshop and literally just pick up magazines. It didn't matter if it was Bazaar or Rolling Stones, and just literally flip the pages in front of my eyeballs. And when I did that, after about 3 minutes, my brain would start turn on, and I'd start flooding with ideas, and I'd go back to the office and start working. Some people it's going to the beach, some people it's sketching, some people it's people watching. So I would say, for those of you out there that were in this digital world, take the freedom to find what that trigger is and just understand, I need that, and tell the people you work with, hey man, I need to go for a walk. Or I got a big project. I'm going to drive to the hills for the afternoon and sketch, right? You're skeptical and think I'm just blowing off work. But the reality is, if you want good work, this is what it takes.
That's what it takes. Yeah. Yeah, definitely take care of yourself out there in the world. Well, Todd, thank you so much. It was such a pleasure being able to chat with you. I'm so glad I got the opportunity. Tom, thanks, Kristen, thanks so much.
Oh my gosh.
Always a pleasure to be here.
Thank you guys. This was a great conversation. I wish we might just have to have you back, Todd. This was good. Stay curious, everyone, right? I mean, just,
Can I bring the angry me next time? Can we just
No, we like this you.
Let's rant about some stuff.
There were some comments in chat about the dream hammer. So, maybe, I don't know.
We can bring the dream hammer back as long as you come in costume.
Nice.
Oh, well, thank you guys so much. Thank you, Talon. Thank you, Tom.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, everyone, for joining. We hope to see you back. We have Beryl joining us on November 17th. They'll be sharing some innovative ways they're looking at leading and educating and inspiring their design team. So I hope you can join us for that. And as a reminder, SoDA Series Live is a collaboration between the Society of Digital Agencies and Adobe. And you can access the previous sessions and our video archives here on the Creative Cloud LinkedIn page. This one will also be available here as soon as we wrap up. And you can also find these on SoDA Series, SoDaSpeaks.com. Feel free to drop us a note on LinkedIn if there are any specific topics or any SoDA member agencies you're really dying to hear from. We're open to suggestions. So thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you for Tom for partnering with us on this. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Kristen. Thank you all. Have a great morning, day, afternoon, wherever you're calling in from, and we'll see you next month.